So the first part of the patterns to presence process is surveying, getting to know the territory, getting to know the landscape. So in this case, it's the landscape of your own life, of your own mind, right? So when you come to create a garden, you're going to see, well, what is it that's already been growing here? What are the weeds? What are the poisonous plants? What are the creepers or things that are stopping the things that I want from growing? And what are the flowers? What are the trees that I actually really want to keep, right? And how do I start to see the landscape of my own inner experience and get to know it better, right? So the behavior science journaling really helps to do that. And you start being guided in a process to get to know yourself. The second one is the digging. So we start to then dig into the soil. And you might be surprised. Some places are softer and easier to dig into. Some places are really hard and resistant, right? So sometimes your soil needs to be a bit watered and a bit softened so we can dig. But we do the digging process together, right? And as we're digging, sometimes we find these root balls. These root balls are these core ideas, these core experiences that have so defined and shaped our ideas of who we are that it's really hard to let go of. But what we do is we kind of get around it, we get a feel for it, we get under it together, and we start to do a little bit of this excavating. So these huge root balls of stories that are holding us back start to get loosened, right? And we can lift them out, right? So now that we've done the digging, then we got to the composting stage, right? And composting is important because just because something didn't serve us doesn't mean that it can't be harvested or used in a different way to create nutrients for the next stage of growth, right? So what we do in the composting stage, we really look at how did all these things come about? What are the ways in which we're able to understand the roots of our experience, and how can we transform them in a way that we can harvest these lessons? Yeah. Then the next stage is the planting stage. So once we've dug out the soil, we've composted a lot of this material, now it's, okay, well, what do we want to plant, right? How do I plant the seeds of what I really do want in my life? I know that if I plant the seed, it's going to grow into that fruit, and it's going to go into that flower, right? So we begin to plant together. And much of this involves the process of starting to learn how our minds work and how to regulate our nervous systems, develop self-care, learn new patterns of understanding and relating to our emotions, right? The intelligence of emotions, and how they're giving us information that we need to learn how to respond to so that we can become aware of whether these old patterns are coming back and how we respond with authenticity to situations. And then the fifth is the tending. You know, just because you've planted a seed and a sprout starts to grow, it doesn't mean that it's going to reach its full bloom, right? It needs to be cared for. And we need to know how to tend to our own inner life. We need to learn how to tend to our situations and relationships with the wisdom and compassion and the practices that we've gained through this process so that it can bear sweet fruit, right? So we start going through this tending process together, and also understanding our patterns of self-sabotage. Because very often, once someone is able to make a new shift or to change a pattern, the old one is just lurking back there, waiting to come and mess it all up again, right? So we look at this in a very honest way and say, how can we tend to this transformational process that we've gone through to ensure that we are being supported to create exactly the kind of garden that we want to grow?